Hi there, hope you're having a pleasant day wherever you may be. Right now, I'm hanging out with the legend people. I'm doing the Navajo Loop Trail in Bryce Canyon National Park. The Navajo Loop Trail can be found in Bryce Canyon National Park, which is in southern Utah at Sunset Point. So for those that have been playing along at home, you might remember that a couple years ago I visited Bryce Canyon on my Four Corners video. Now unfortunately I visited in February, so all the trails were snowed in. So I came back, and this is my chance to finally hike into the Hoodoos. If you'd like to check out that video, go right ahead, but what do you say we get back to this one? For starters, let's talk about Bryce Canyon in general, and the fact that it's not technically a canyon. It's actually kind of just sort of a cliff face that has a lot of erosional stuff going on here. It's part of a larger geologic formation known as the Grand Staircase, which encompasses a lot of the Colorado Plateau. Now, the main geologic feature found here at Bryce Canyon National Park are the hoodoos. The hoodoos are formed through a process known as ice wedging. What happens is you have these long fins of rock where water will seep in, and through cold weather or overnight, the water will freeze and expand, put pressure on the rock, and over a cycle of doing that over and over and over, eventually it'll create a hole in the rock known as a window. Eventually the stresses are put on the upper part of the window where that eventually breaks away and you're left with a hoodoo. Of course, that's according to the geologists. If you were to ask the native Paiute people who've inhabited this region for hundreds of years, they would tell you that the hoodoos are the legend people who were turned to stone by Sinawava, the trickster coyote god, for bad deeds that they committed prior to the arrival of the Paiutes. Now, this is a sacred oral tradition that is passed down amongst the Paiute people. The version that we have is sort of a watered down one. We don't actually know the true version that the Paiutes tell. Now, part of the reason there's such a large collection of these hoodoos here at Bryce Canyon is that the conditions are pretty good for the formation. That process needed for ice wedging, where you have pretty decently warm daytime temperatures and below freezing nighttime temperatures, occurs upwards of 180 times a year here at Bryce, which is considered a lot. Bryce Canyon National Park is very long and narrow, and it goes for several miles, but the stretch between Sunrise Point, that includes Sunset Point, and Inspiration Point, that has the bulk of the collection of the hoodoos here, and it's known as the Bryce Amphitheater. As far as the name Bryce Canyon, there was a homesteader here back in the 1800s named Ebenezer Bryce. He made a road down into the amphitheater here, and the locals began to call it Bryce's Canyon. Fast forward to the early 20th century when the national park was established, Bryce Canyon National Park. Now, when you visit here, there are a lot of trails to choose from. I decided to check out the Navajo Loop. The Navajo Loop Trail is 1.3 miles round trip and starts off at Sunset Point. It descends a few hundred feet down into the Bryce Canyon Amphitheater, and what's great is that it takes you past a handful of pretty awesome sites, including some iconic ones. This steep-walled section of the trail is known as Wall Street. It's pretty easy to figure out why. Then, as you're walking through Wall Street, you encounter these huge trees, and you have to wonder, how did they get enough sunlight to grow? Pretty amazing. Another of the cool features on the Navajo Loop Trail, Thor's Hammer. You can see it from the rim trail, but it's pretty cool to see it up close like this. It's pretty awesome. One of the other cool features you can check out is two bridges. Now, when you get to the fork in the road, don't be daunted. Just go around the corner. It's literally right there. Easy to see. Overall, it's not an overly strenuous hike. It's considered moderate. The going down portion is obviously much less strenuous. It's a little tough on your knees, but like any canyon hike, the hard part is getting out. And yes, it is a challenge, but I'm out of shape, and with frequent stops to admire the beauty and things like that, it's a very doable trip out. But what's great is that, like I said, at only 1.3 miles, it's not an overly overly long hike, but yet it gets you really into the nitty-gritty of the hoodoos. You get up close and personal to them. That you can admire them in a different level than you can from the rim trail. Now, if you decide to do the loop, it doesn't really matter which way you go. If you go Wall Street first or Two Bridges first, either way, you're going to encounter some switchbacks, and they're going to be tough. So, like I said, just take it easy, take a lot of breaks, admire the beauty. You'll get to the top. Now, all in all, the Navajo Loop hike is great. If you only want to do one to get down into the hoodoos, that's a great one to do. But the Queen's Garden one was a nice little addition. The Queen's Garden Trail continues back down into the amphitheater, into a different part of it, and you get a lot of great views of some more hoodoos, some good looks at the fins, and ultimately it ends up at a spot known as Queen's Garden. So at the end of the Queen Garden Trail is a rock that looks like Queen Victoria. That's where it gets its name. Kind of a stretch, but as for me, I must be a glutton for punishment. I started off the trail doing the Navajo Loop, going down the Wall Street section first, then coming up the Two Bridges, and then I walked over to Sunrise Point, did Queen's Garden Trail, and now I'm coming back up the Two Bridges Trail again. So this is the second time I've done this today. Although if you do decide to treat the Queen's Garden and Navajo Loop as sort of one big loop, you'll have to make a decision when you get to Navajo Loop. You'll have to either choose the Wall Street side or the Two Bridges side. Now, I enjoyed both of them. I thought they were great, but at the same time, I did the entire Navajo Loop before I went and did the garden one. So I avoided having to make the decision of Wall Street or Two Bridges. And the Two Bridges part is nice, but it's actually the little the switchbacks in amongst the hoodoos that are really nice. That was a highlight, I thought. A few things to keep in mind while you're hiking here at Bryce Canyon, and pretty much in general. Take plenty of water, take rest when you need it. Remember that here at Bryce Canyon, it's 8,000 feet of elevation, so don't overexert yourself. You know, it's hard enough to breathe as it is. And just like they say at the Grand Canyon, going down is optional, coming up is mandatory. So just know your limits and don't overexert yourself. Now, having been here once and seen the hoodoos from above, I was more than happy with my visit here. But now that I've since come back and actually walked down amongst them, definitely say that it enhances the experience. So if you visit and you have the means, try it. Hike down there. It's great. Well, that does it for this one. Thanks for joining me on this trip to the Navajo Loop in Bryce Canyon National Park. Hope you found it interesting. Hope you found it entertaining. And I really, really, really hope it encourages you to come check out Bryce Canyon. It's a beautiful park. Even if you decide to just walk the rim trail and look from above, it's beautiful, beautiful stuff here. But if you decide to do the hikes down, even better. With that said, I guess I'll see you on the next one. It's kind of nice. This time at my picture at the Bryce Canyon sign, it's not 5 degrees. It's about 45 degrees, which is way nicer this time.